So, in the last video on the war and ideologies, I want to get back to peace and love and oneness. We're talking about young girls in monotheism. And all three religions have some weird things with young girls. So, uh, most famous is probably Islam. In the Hadith of Aisha, I mentioned it in previous videos. This is one of my biggest problems with Islam. It's very clearly stated she was 6 when she got married, 9 when they consummated. Very clearly, it says she was on the swings with her friends when she was 9, and her mom came and wiped her down with a rag and sent her off to Muhammad to consummate the marriage. It's not really up for debate. It's in black and white. You can look it up in Quran.com, any of the on-site. In the original translations, there's kind of a lot of revisions for people who talk about a perfect book. And the Hadith isn't the Quran per se, but it's a lot of revisionism in Islam. And it's good that they're trying to modernize their thinking. It'll build stronger foundations and a little more sanity, a little more modernized moral code, I think, to some degree. But it's very clearly stated. And it leads to, a lot of, and I've heard stories from Arab countries. My ex-wife's mother's Jew from Libya. So my daughter's, both her grandparents are North African. From Libya, they would marry young, like 13, 14, because the Arabs would come and want to marry them when they were young. And so they would quickly marry them off to other Jews so that they wouldn't marry the Arabs and not be Jews anymore. So very common, leads to a lot of the child trafficking accusations about Islam, which may or not, again, a lot of these people are hardline people that do this kind of stuff. So in all the religions, the worst, it seems like the worst elements come from the people who believe they're living in the most traditional, orthodox, let's call it, way of the religion. Ironically, it's not normally the moderate people who are just wanting to be better people. It's these like hardliners. So could be, I don't know. It's a whole nother topic. And but Judaism has its own. So it's funny when you talk to Muslims about this, though, and now something I don't agree with. They'll right away always try to cite that Rebecca was only 3 years old. So Abraham's son from Sarah, his wife, his first wife, Hagar, gave birth to Ishmael, who's, they say all Muslims are Ishmaelites. They're like descendants of Ishmael. But then there was, Sarah had Isaac, Yitzhak, Avinu. And Sarah Menu and Abraham Avinu were 90 and 100 when they gave birth. So she was 90, like a miracle, I guess, obviously. And Abraham Avinu was 100. And that's, again, the Akedah, the sacrificing of Yitzhak Avinu by Abraham Avinu, he was like 30, I believe, when that all went down, or 33. There's different interpretations, but he was a grown adult, and Abraham Avinu was like 133 years old, so he very easily could have overpowered his pops. It wasn't like he was a little kid. They always try to portray him as like 8-year-old or something. It's like, hey, Dad. Because he wasn't. He was much older than that. But most people say, so it doesn't say specifically in the Torah the age that Yitzhak Avinu met Rebecca, Imenu, Rivka. So Rivka was the rabbis have tried to put together timelines to figure out exactly about how old she would be. One interpretation, she was 3, which obviously is insanely young. Muslims love to throw that. Rebecca was only 3. Well, Rifka Menu may or may not have been another interpretation. It doesn't say directly. It's not like the Hadith of Aisha that says in black and white text exactly her ages. They don't know. It doesn't say in the Torah. Anyone who's read through it knows it doesn't really say in the Torah how old she was. They try to guess. 3, another interpretation is she was 16, which makes more sense because she was seen drawing water from the well, at the well. And so a 3-year-old at the well, that seems kind of weird, right? Like, how did a 3-year-old draw? 16 makes more sense. So who knows? And then even with Christianity, Mary was the word they use in Isaiah, born of a virgin. It's not really virgin. It's like a young girl who's like 12 or under. I think even under 12. I think she was or under 13. So she was 12, most people say. Whether it was an Ethiopian guy like we talked about in the story of half black Jesus. People always, it was funny too, people got triggered about race on that. Like, more than a few said that it wasn't like the Immaculate Conception, which is a very Greek Roman idea for anybody who knows Greek mythology, right? It's not a very Jewish idea. It's very Greek or Roman, but that Rivka was like potentially 3. Mary was 12. Whether it was the divine that impregnated her, she was also a very young girl. And so either way, there was a crazy rabbi in New York who was like molesting little girls, and he said it's his God-given right to do such a thing. And those hardline people, he was an ultra-Orthodox guy, draw on these scriptures to basically make this permissible, acceptable. But I don't think it is. That's where I draw the line. Children and animals. I don't think it is. I don't care what the scriptures say with this. This is one thing I'll never agree with. 16 and 40-year-old or whatever he was. Sketchy, but 16 is already pretty mature. I think Hawaii for the longest time, it was 14 was the age of consent. And so, then they raised it to 16. I think now it might even still be 16. It's, or 18, but 18, 20 is right. It's funny that people are getting so weirded out by like 18-year-olds with 40, 50-year-olds when, one, so many women have done it for so long. And now all these women are doing it with young men. And it's like, are we okay with it? Are we not okay with it? When does someone become an adult? Honestly, I think 10 years up or down is fine. I've dated a girl like 9 years, almost 10 years older than me. And I've dated a woman who was like 10 years younger than me. 9-ish. Well, she was like 8.5, almost 9. And I think 10 years up or down is pretty legit. Ish, maybe 15 down. Women are just more mature than men. And so maybe 15, depending, especially the older you get. I think 35 and 50 is a lot different than the 30, 35 and 20 even, like those 15 years. Because you gain a lot more experience and life is right. So if the man's 50 and his wife's 35, it's not as weird as a 35-year-old man dating a 20-year-old girl. But so, it's like maturity. Some people are more mature. I still have the brain of a kid, but I prefer more mature people, and that I like to think deep. And I think life, it's exponentially. You learn, not just every year you learn like more, but it's exponential. It increases so much. You learn so much and gain so much wisdom every year, and packs on that. probably better off. But there's a lot of immature people that may do better. Guys that don't have their goals set at 35 that, any more than a girl at 20 might. So it's the worst. No, 30 years is weird. I personally, like, if you can be, I think 15 is a legit maximum, in that if you could be the parent, it's already weird. Like, at 16, people are already legit having kids. Like, it's kind of taboo, but we're married and at 16 throughout time, and it's like already people start having kids, and it's not so crazy. 15-year-old even is already like a little crazy, and younger than that, it's like insane. But if you could be their parent, legitly be their parent, it's weird. If you could be their grandparent, that's super weird. Like 50-year-olds dating 20-year-olds, that's pretty weird. Or like, 60-year-olds dating 20-year-olds, that's, you can be their grandparent. Like, that's freaking weird. But teach your own, no judgments. But I definitely think children, we need to leave them alone. All three religions have these weird stories, whether it's Aisha, Rivka, Imenu, or even Mary, that of like young girls in the scripture. I'm not really cool with any of that. And different times we can argue, okay, fine. If you try to bring it in the modern day, expect pushback. And that's all I'm going to say about that. We're going to get away from the war of ideologies now, get back to love and goodness and what we're really here to focus on. There's enough negativity in the world. We don't want to focus on that kind of stuff. But that is something that needed to be addressed, I think, in all three religions. And so I just wanted to say a little piece. I wish everyone the maintenance of maintaining innocence. That let's not strip the innocence of the kids. They're already so overexposed to sexuality, porn, all these other kind of things. Let's try to eliminate that from my kids as much as possible. I see my daughter watching these TikTok videos, so young, 8 years old, and I see so much, even for kids on YouTube and stuff, sexualized comments and sexualized content, even in cartoons and little videos that not quite appropriate for her age. It's not, I don't think they're healthy for little kids. Like, let's let little kids be innocent. It's the same with like drag people wanting to read books about gayness and this and whatever. They're reading like Winnie the Pooh. There's an argument that may be okay, but it is already like kind of a sexual fetish, drag stuff, and so does that need to be brought in? I mean, if that's how they are, if they're a transsexual, transvestite, or whatever, then okay, that's one thing. They're always like that. But drag is already kind of like a fetish. They're not always like that, and so is that healthy? But also the books you're reading. They don't need to be educated on sexuality when they're children. That's what sex ed's for. It's like junior high, right? And that's a good age, 12, 13. People are like hitting puberty. That's, I think, a good age to start teaching kids about sexuality, if we're going to do it. But like I've said in previous videos, it's weird morality and sexuality were the two things kind of left to parents to teach for the most part. We're not seeming to want to teach kids morality, but we want to teach them about sex. And that's weird to me. I'm not okay with that. I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think teaching kids about homosexuality or any sexuality, heterosexuality, let alone sexual fetishes and these different types of kinks and whatever they want to teach kids is okay. I'm never going to be okay with that. I don't care if people want to hate on it or whatever. Those are my beliefs, and I'm entitled to believe what I want. And I think, but we do have to have some kind of lines, and I think children are that line, to let them maintain their innocence. That's a blessing I wish for the world, is that for people also to maintain some kind of innocence, adults, but especially children. They should maintain innocence. We don't need to expose them to sex yet until they're older. When they're start getting their hormones, hitting puberty, and become sexually viable, I guess, like they're pubescent and they can actually reproduce. So, sexuality is a concern, a topic that they should be educated about. Then okay, but anything before that is grooming, and kids can be taught anything. They're learning the parameters of life. They don't need to be taught that stuff so young because it doesn't really concern them yet, and it strips something of their innocence from them. And so I don't believe in sexualized content for kids, even with like some of the TikTok dances and those kinds of things, and weird videos and the cartoons and feeds that the kids' YouTube sometimes shows. But the same with anything on like the book readings and those kinds of things. I think we should be really careful with that. So that's the blessing and wish, innocence. Let's get back to peace and love, though, and moving forward together to try to bring about peace on this planet, the grand party, oneness of humanity. Those are the things I care about most. And let's do this, people. Save the humans.
Trying to be a better man. Oh yeah. Trying to do the best I can. Oh yeah. And I'm gonna do right thing. Do right thing. No matter what they want to say. And I'm gonna still fight for you. Still fight for you.